All right, Sam here. Well, again, midday, November 21st, and we're looking at Litecoin here. This is the 1 hour Litecoin to the dollar on Kraken, and we're also starting to see some action here on Litecoin, potentially breaking out of this long range that we've been stuck in for months now. So here was our all-time high, the big correction that we had, and then there's been a couple of tries to get some impulsive movement out of this, but it's just consistently been rejected. So we're seeing some things now that are kind of interesting that potentially put us on the roadmap to, at the very least, to challenge these prior all-time highs. So a quick few things to look at, right? So you want to always step back from it and get some perspective on it. So keeping it very simple, Elliott wave aside, if we just work from our swing low to this pivot high here, where we've made this retracement, we've come down, wicked around the 50 several times, got to push through it, and now we're starting to see some impulsive movement, and we've got some wave structure that we can work with. Well, so of course we've got some resistance that we got to get through. So high to low, right? We're still internal to that. Here's a good sign. We've finally broken through the 6.5 on the other side. So potentially now we're off to some new highs, or at least to challenge the old highs. So given our swing low to swing high coming to the 50, well, here's that algo target right here. Here's the first one at 77, call it 77.85. Here's the negative 618 on that. So how do we get there, and is it moving technically? Well, before we get down into the Elliott wave count structure, let's, as I would always encourage you to do when you've got big pivots like this, I'd want to look at a pitchfork on it and get that right on the low. And interestingly, you can see we've come right to the median line. So this pitchfork still containing the structure. You can see here, so essentially you've got a nice corner pocket here. So the probability from here that we meet the median line is 80%. Boom, we hit it. Now we're retracing and potentially our next target here, right? So see how this lines up. So here's our 3, we put in our 4, and potentially now we're putting in the fifth of this the wave count here in this degree here in the green, which would put us back to the median line. Right, and of course we'll draw as we go to a smaller time frame. We'll or at least pull this off to clear up the chart. We'll draw additional median lines on this, but we can see certainly here that this target has a high probability here with this action, then retrace, then looking to push back to it. Here are your algo targets. So a likely target potentially here for either the 5th of this move or the 3rd of the 5th. That wouldn't surprise me either. So nothing says we have to top here. And this is always subject to relabeling, but I think we have a good count on it. Let me open it up a little bit so we can look at it again in more detail. So we get this nice one. Here's our 2, 3, 4, 5. So completes our 1 wave. Now we make a deep 2. So just checking that, just as you would always do, see how, is it trading technically. So there's our 1 wave. Well, we come right, we actually wicked through it. That's just a little stop run. But back into it again. So you're seeing this support develop here, of course, right on the edge of the pitchfork as well. So this may have required, and I think I was in and out a couple of times trying to buy this with a stop under the 65 and took small little hits. These are, you got to think of those. It's like taking a jab, right? It's not a knockout blow if you're not putting crazy amount of risk on it. So you're gonna, if you're in the ring, expect to get hit with a few punches, right? So those are a few jabs that hit you that you take them. Does it still make sense? Does the count still work? Well, given our 1, it's not unreasonable to anticipate a deep 2. Yes, so we went to a diagonal. Right, so here was that 1. Right, so now we're looking at this. Okay, so where are we now? Does this still work? So now we're into, if this is our 1, here's our 1 here on this degree. Here's our deep 2 right to the edge of the median line. Now we're starting a 5-wave structure to complete our 3rd of this degree. So within that degree, which we go to in green, I get a 1, 2. Here's my big push up here. Here's the payoff for consistently being willing to go back into the market, even if you got stopped out here on the wick through the 65. That willingness to maintain the structure and the discipline to continue to enter the market because the count is still valid. Right, so these are very low risk, right? So buying in here at the 618 with a stop on the 65, that's that's a very modest amount of risk, right? So you can go repeatedly there until you get the break, and upon getting it, now you can be fairly confident that you've got a 1-2 in place. So as you start to see this action, you're now anticipating it. We know that we have high probability because we're on the outside edge of the pitchfork of a return to the median line, and we can start to project beyond just the algo targets, because here was the first target here at the negative 23 off of this pull, off of this swing low to high for the one wave. There's the algo target, was hit, wicked through it. So once we go through them, then we start looking for Elliott wave targets. So if I take the length of 1, project it from my 2, well, we go almost to the 272. So an extreme move, right, as you can see it. So this wick, very extreme. So so we have the 1272 here, and then just adding 100% to that, there's the 272, which catches the high. So let me take that off. So we know, given that structure and this market strength here, that high probability we have a 1, 2, 3 in. So we're expecting the 4. So again, looking, just doing this. It's kind of hard to see here. Let me get a better. Make sure I've got my pivot there. Okay, so let me pull back out. So if I've got my 2 in off of this low here, and I go up to my 3, well, here's my 50. Here's my wave 1. We don't overlap. Here's, look at this. Comes within a few ticks of it. So again, these are tells. These are tells in the market. That does not happen accidentally. So within a few ticks of the wave 1, we hold it. Then we start to move. We get a shallow C wave, which we see over and over again in crypto. These shallow C waves because of the strong demand. So corrections are being bought, and they're not waiting for the traditional A, B, C to come down here. So here's your 4. So we get the A, the 3-wave B, very shallow C. That gives us our 4. And then the expectation was that we were off for a 5th. So I've already relabeled this once because it was very reasonable to be anticipating that we get a 5-wave structure here to complete this degree in green here for a 5th. But look at this action. So given the depth of that, I can't get a good count here that works as anything other than a 1-2. There is no 5-wave structure here for this to be completing as you might anticipate per your Elliott wave textbook, stick figure example. Market doesn't always cooperate like that. So given that we get this 5-wave count here and it tops. So one possibility is that you have a truncated 5th, right? So you could certainly make the case that you have a 3, 4, 5 with a truncated 5th. All right, and still could be the case. But now given this quick correction and how quickly it was bought back, that implies to me that we're not done yet. We come right to the Vegas wave. Take note of that. So I have this per my primary count as now a 1-2 of the 5th. So given that, let me pull some of this off just so it's easier to see. So given that we are here in a 4 and we're in an impulsive move, I'm going to project from the length of my 1 wave from my 4th wave. And look here, look what we've done here. So here's the 100%. Again, shouldn't be surprising that we go to the tick and then we get this reaction. So it still could be the truncated 5th. That you can't rule that out. But if we're going to break this high, then higher probability that we're putting in a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of our 5th. So that's how I'm counting it now. And I've got this. So here's my 4. Here's my 1. We know a 2 very often will go to the 786. Now, interestingly, it goes a few ticks shy of the 786, but look at this pivot. Hold it. Right? That's why you always look left. Look left for structure. Prior resistance becomes support to the tick. So high probability now that you've got a 1-2. If that's a 1-2, well, here's our algo target, right? Based from this swing low to high. There's the 786, there's the 23, the negative 618, the 100. But given the shallowness there, because I'm now looking for a third, I'm going to go to my fib alternate price projection and anticipate that I'm in a third. So I'm looking for at least 100% of my 1. Look how that lines up within a few ticks of the negative 23. So an interesting point. That's the kind of thing to alarm, because you could top out here. It would surprise me, but you could. Right now, per the primary count, my expectation is if we're going to go into a third here, likely target here, and look how it lines up with the median line. There's the highest probability target for a wave 3, 1618 to 175 window. So for that target, if I put a little box on it, as I like to do, so I don't have to always keep all these lines on it, I know I've got a target for a third here, which coincidentally lines up perfectly with a return to the median line. Right? High probability that we get back to it. So if that's a good count and I'm in my 5th, here's my 1-2, potentially my third. So if you didn't buy it here, well, you can't buy it now because the stop is too far away. So you've got to wait and be patient now if you're not already in it, and wait for that third to top. Or perhaps if this is a 1-2, we know to expect a 5-wave subdivision impulsive structure within the third. So we have the possibility. Let me take that to a smaller degree. I'll put it in a different color, and we'll go down to, let's go to a sub-minuet, and I'm going to put the wave on it so you can see what I'm trying to do here. So if in the larger 1-2, let me put the, okay, so if in that 1-2, within the third of that 1-2, I'm expecting an impulsive structure. In fact, I need to see an impulsive structure if I'm going to maintain an impulse wave. So my third has to subdivide into 5. So if I've got a 1 here, next opportunity to enter would be on the 2 of the third of the 5th. I know it's crazy to speak it out loud, but if you get it on your chart, you can follow it. So we have a potential roadmap here that fits. It makes sense. It's in line with the probabilities. It's in line with the fib targets. It's in line with the Elliott wave probability targets. So where's your opportunity? Well, now if you're sitting here looking at this going, damn, this thing is moving, I want in. Well, you can't buy it here. You can't buy a breakout because where's your stop? Your stop's way down here. That's too much risk. That's just a stupid trade. So you wait for this 1 wave to top, and then we wait for the 2. Because then if you're buying the 2, right? So if you buy the 2 at the 50, then your stop is here under the pivot, as opposed to buying the breakout here and then putting your stop under the pivot. Why take that amount of risk? Now that's no longer a jab. That's an undercut to your jaw. That can hurt. That make you wobble. That can hurt your account. So you wait for the 2, which you know is likely going to go at least 50. So if we get any sort of a pullback here, there's your next opportunity to catch the third of the 5th. So it requires patience, but if you're not in, you alarm it. You wait for signs that this thing is topped. You alarm the 50 and look for your next entry, knowing that if you're wrong, if this count is invalidated, the market is going to prove you wrong at a break of this pivot. Again, that's a jab, not an undercut. Okay, always, first thing in your mind has to be, where's the risk? Where am I wrong? Anticipating you're going to be wrong more than you're right. Welcome to trading. That's the reality of it. So your focus always has to be on how much can I lose, not looking up at how much I can make. That's human nature. You look at the target. I'm always looking at, where am I wrong? Could this hurt me? Can any one trade hurt me? I advise you to not put yourself in that position. All right, how am I doing? There's 14 minutes. We got just enough time to look at it against Bitcoin. Not as pretty here against Bitcoin because we're kind of we're kind of faltering here. We look like we might have some traction here. Look at this algo reaction here. So we get a 5-wave structure in Bitcoin, Litecoin to Bitcoin. I'm over here on Poloniex now to imply that we've got a 1-wave in. We get a nice ABC right into our sweet spot, right into the pocket. I mean, it's just perfect technically. And then we get a big spike out of it. But now we've just kind of drifted. We're just drifting sideways. I don't like to see that, So becomes certainly an amount of time that passes. If you don't get back into that impulsive structure, then I get more concerned about the trade failing. Right now, it's still valid. Hard to count that. That's. It's likely algo buying it here, but they're not to their target. So now we're just kind of drifting. So is this a 1, 2? It's kind of, there is no count there. So if you bought this, your stop's under the 65. If we're going to drift back down, again, you very, very modest amount of risk. I would like to see this thing start to get some traction. So given the pivots, of course, I'm going to put a pitchfork on it. So given that. I don't want to. I would have preferred to see that stay within that structure, within that geometry. We could come back down here, revisit this low, test it again. I don't love that as much, but perhaps maybe you've got some sort of a, this wick kind of screws you up on a count, but you might have a truncated fifth, so you might be doing this. Maybe that's what you're hoping for if you're a bull here. And this just kind of an aberrant, that could be your one. It's just an ugly count. I just don't like it as much. I like it much better in the dollar. But I'll watch it here because if I get a good 2, so if I've got something like this underway, so we just work off the pivots. Am I going? I'm sitting here right now at that same pocket here on the smaller degree. Do you see that? So on the smaller degree here, I'm sitting right at between the 618 and that we wicked right into the pocket. So potentially, there's your 1, 2. So I wouldn't discourage anyone from buying that because your stop is so tight, knowing that the 2 can go to the 786. Right? It's drifting. Any help from the oscillators? It's not what you'd like to see. You would like to see that come down, get underneath the 30, and then start to turn. But I wouldn't shy away from that trade just because we're drifting here. You could have a little ABC here, but I'd want to start seeing signs of strength now. So is it worth a small position to take a first bite at it? Sure. The risk is so so small. Yeah, it's tradable, but I prefer it in the dollar. All right, there's 17 minutes. That's enough on Litecoin. Certainly, it's in play again. One to be watching. All right, guys.